We'll keep the tips. It being 6:02 and we have a quorum, so let's get the meeting started with roll call, please.
Hassig.
Here.
Cribs.
Here.
Laird.
Here.
Montemayor.
Here.
Sparhawk is excused. Mayor,
Here.
we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Patrick. First item is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of minutes from May 13th, the local licensing authority items, wilderness workshop special event permit, Roaring Fork Youth Orchestra special event permit, downtown liquor license renewal, El Dorado license renewal, accounts from May 27th, advisory board member application for Francisco DeLoya, Park and Rec member reapplication for Drew Sorensen, and tree board member applications for Josh Crawford and Noah Sakamoto. Any questions or items to pull? Okay, and we'll just note for the record that the planning and zoning applications were pulled because they need to be here and we had them on consent and they didn't know that. So we'll invite them to our next meeting. Anybody want to make a motion?
The consent agenda.
Second. Second by Colleen. Any opposed or abstain?
Aye.
All right, thanks, Chris. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anybody here who'd like to address the board? Thanks, Drew. Congratulations. Anybody online? Okay, moving on, trustee comments. Anybody have comments since we last met?
I was just deferring to other folks.
Oh, okay, go ahead then.
I've addressed this group 2 other times, Mr. Mayor, and I'm a resident of Carbondale. My name is Pat Guerra, and there a couple years ago, a house was approved on Perry Ridge that is quite an anomaly from everything else that's been built in that development. And that anomaly relates to building height and retaining walls. And it's particularly critical because on the southwest side of Perry Ridge, that's alluvial fan. So it's very unstable soils. And I could go into all the details because I spent quite a bit of time researching it. I won't bother you with all that, but I would like to request a meeting with both the planning director and the building official who have responded to a number of my inquiries, and I've met with them. They have not answered the detailed questions of how we could approve such an anomaly with no change to the PUD and no change to the building code from the prior administration. So this is an interpretation of guidelines which seems inconsistent with 30 years of development in what is referred to as RVR. So I'd like to request that a meeting with those 2 gentlemen addressing the specifics of my most recent emails to them, which some of you actually have. And my objective is not to have some mistake be admitted. Mistakes happen. That's okay. What I'm interested in is what the mitigation is for the current property under construction and the adjacent property, and that kind of anomaly not be approved again. I hope that's very clear. And if it's not, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Your request has been noted by our town manager, and I'm sure she'll reach out to you and with some sort of response, whether that meeting goes forward or not. But we appreciate your sharing your concerns. Anybody else who's here who'd like to address the board? There was nobody online, Lauren? Okay, then we'll now move into trustee comments. Anybody have comments since last time we met? Don't hold back because we'll move quickly. Jess?
I'll go ahead. I attended the GCE meeting a couple of weeks ago, Garfield Clean Energy. And there was a gentleman there for the advanced energy management presentation, talking about how we can capture data about town properties, different properties in the valley. They're working with the school district, and how GCE is working with them, sort of directing them to help different municipalities capture their data of energy use in their buildings, and then also come up with a plan and sort of a culture change or a policy change to increase efficiency, save money, things like that across the board. So it was very interesting. It sounds like they are already doing some of that through GCE for the town of Carbondale. It was just interesting to see the data that they had. The data on the school district was really interesting, how they're trying to save money on utilities. And then obviously that's the end goal, but also increase efficiency for their buildings. It was a good presentation. And so I encourage you to check it out. If you're interested, I can probably get you the packet that he presented, the slide deck. The other thing that they talked about, there was a state of Colorado representative there talking about the wildfire resilience code that the state is going to be requiring. And I need to sort of follow up with staff on it, but it's going to be required that every jurisdiction adopt a wildfire resiliency code when they adopt new code. And so I just want to make sure that we're looking at that because we just adopted new code. So I think that the state is going to require us to do that. So that's probably, if not already on the building officials' radar, it probably should be. Other than that, I don't have much to report.
Okay,
Thanks.
thanks, Jess. Christina, any comments?
We did have a Transportation Coalition meeting, and they had a guest speaker, and they're talking about congestion reduction. It was really interesting, especially in Aspen. And it looks like, they're just continuing with the group and seeing what they could do with the traffic in Aspen and how it affects Down Valley. And our next meeting is, I believe, in June. The Tourism Council, I attended that meeting, and we're just talking a lot about our 5-year strategic plan that we have going on with the tourism group, and then our upcoming what our plan is for the rodeo and summer activities for tourism. And then I just wanted to say congratulations to all the graduates. Again, I attended the Roaring Fork High School graduation. I'm always impressed by, the valedictorian and the salutatorian, just outstanding students that we have in this valley. And then just the attendance, it's just a great community event.
Great, thanks, Christina.
Mhm.
Ross, any comments?
Sure. Just a quick reminder that the art walk is next. We should have that ready to run. The 12th. Now I take it back, the 6th, the 5th. Sorry, art walk is the next 5th, but also the 12th is an important date as well, for folks to come meet our finalist candidates. And I'm trying to put the word out as much as possible in a little twofer as I tell folks to come to that on the 12th and the Bach to Bluegrass fundraiser for the orchestra on the 13th. Wanted to acknowledge, Pat, and your efforts. I feel like sometimes, having been on that side of the podium, that initial comments sort of vanish pretty quickly. And I wanted to first acknowledge your concerns, the fact that you've come to a couple meetings and maybe haven't gotten the answer that you want, or haven't gotten a couple of things. I'm hopeful that you can get at least some sort of closure as to what we might do going forward, or, I hope we hear about this, and if there's something that we can do to acknowledge, to take a look at things, if there's something that needs to be looked at going forward, because not necessarily a loophole, but something that can be interpreted in a couple different ways, and that we do take a look at it. And I just wanted to acknowledge that it's a lot of effort, I think, to sometimes track down the right way to get heard, and you're doing the right thing, for sure, by coming and talking. And lastly, just one comment, and that is, I'm wondering whether on the pool front, whether we can have recycling of any sort. I've like very dutifully separating all my stuff, and then I walk by there and everything and a bazillion cardboard boxes and plastic and all of that is just in a big old dumpster. And I don't know whether that's a place where we sort of set an example, if there's anything we can do to lead by example there or not, if it's just so far out of the realm of construction. But I know that construction debris is a big deal and is one of the things that is filling our landfills. And if there's some way that maybe we could look at that.
Thanks, Ross. Colin? Okay, Chris, any comments tonight?
Yeah, I'll just give a shout out to Tracy Wilson and the Bonedale Bike Week for putting on a great series of events last week and highlighting our robust biking culture in the town and hopefully spreading that culture to as many people as possible. Keep your eyes out for that next year. Also, it's, springtime, and I think it is CSA season for a lot of people. So if you would like to support local farmers, please take a look at the options out there. I think the farmers market, sorry, I don't have a good resource in front of me, but that's a great way to support our local food system and be part of the change there. And then finally, I'd like to give a shout out to Aspen Public Radio, our KDNK sister station up Valley, part of the NPR network, who has joined with NPR to sue the Trump administration over funding cuts. And they're one of the four stations that are sort of symbolic, I guess, of the networks, along with KSUT down in the Southern Ute tribe, and then the Colorado Public Radio. So it's 3 Colorado network stations, and NPR are the 4 plaintiffs in that case. And so very thankful to Breeze for taking up the charge on that with us. So I think that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Chris. I don't have anything tonight, so we'll move on to attorney's comments. All right, thanks, Mark. Manager's comments, Lauren?
Still trying to coordinate a tour of the pool site. Haven't been able to find a time when everyone is available yet. But our latest and greatest, even though I'm sorry Jess is not available, is the potential of doing it 4:15 on June 10th, and then having dinner together, and then followed by our meeting. That's our next regular meeting. So my question is, besides Jess, is everyone else available that day? A little bit earlier than the regular meeting?
What day?
The 10th of June. It's our next Tuesday meeting night.
I think so.
4:15.
Makes for a busy week. We'll have that and then a meeting, and then Thursday night we'll have the meet and greet, and then Friday we'll be here all day for town manager interviews. But if that's when it works, that's when it works. I can make it work.
Okay,
Sounds
Thank
like
you.
that's a go-ahead.
got it. I have no idea about Erica, but
Okay.
we'll figure it out.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, getting into our action items then, and really, this one's not an action item, it's an informational item, but I see April here, and April, if you'd like to join us, and I'm not sure if anybody's online. Okay, we're not seeing the usual little picture in picture there, but that's okay. Yeah, so thank you for both being here. We just want to use this opportunity. First, I'll let you both introduce yourselves, but we just want to use this opportunity to really ask questions. Lauren made it really clear last time that while she's been attending these meetings, she doesn't present herself as an expert in this area, nor do any of us. And so I think we just had a lot of questions last time, and I don't think we'll get into the details of, how much should we contribute tonight? That's not really the focus. It's really just understanding if the town does decide to come forward with a contribution, what are the benefits of that? What are the risks in that? How's our money either protected or not protected in the long run? Things like that. So as we get the Zoom organized there, maybe we could start, April, with you. I don't know if everybody knows you, and for the public, just let us know who you are and kind of your involvement. And for everybody's awareness, what we're talking about is the fact that there's a trailer park on the edge of town that's for sale, along with another one from the same owner near Basalt. And the residents have organized to try to purchase it, which they have the right to try to do under state law. And they've asked the various jurisdictions, counties and municipalities to make some financial contributions to bridge the gap between what the residents can feasibly borrow and what the purchase price is. So with that, hand it off to April, and I believe it's Tim.
Great. Thank you for having me tonight. I am really here to answer your questions, but I'm happy to introduce myself. I'm April Long. I'm the Executive Director of Regional Housing Coalition. As a reminder, if you're not familiar with us, we are a new nonprofit in the region. We were established in 2022, just a few years old, and we were born out of the idea that there needs to be additional efforts and a regional effort, a focused effort by our local governments to address our affordable housing issues. We were brought into this specific conversation because the local governments, staff from local governments were getting together to coordinate and better understand what's happening with the sale of these mobile home parks and begin to get questions answered so that they could present to you all what might be needed in addition to what the residents can do themselves. And as a regional representative of all of these local governments, it made sense to work with the Housing Coalition to do that. And so I was asked to step in to help with that. And just for your benefit and for your knowledge, have been successful in the last week in getting a couple of grants to cover my time in working on this effort, because it has been significant, requires kind of a pivot from the rest of the work that we're doing to do this. And I didn't prepare a presentation tonight. Happy to answer the questions, but I think it probably would be best to start with Tim, who is going to introduce you to what he's working on. He is an expert in this field, where the rest of us are catching up.
Great. Thanks, April.
Thanks.
Tim, go ahead and introduce yourself, please. And if you want to give us a little rundown, that's fine. I mean, we're generally familiar with the outline of the parks that we're talking about and the offer that's on the table. So I think we're really focused more on what Thistle Rock does and the role that we may or may not play in the purchase.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. So excuse my voice. I've been talking all day, so I think it just plummeted this afternoon, even worse. But anyway, I'm Tim Townsend. I'm the director of Thistle Rock. And I did make a quick little presentation, I think, so I can tell you a little bit more about Thistle. I believe I can share my screen if that is helpful here.
Sure.
All right. Can you all see that okay? Do I need to zoom in at all?
I think that's okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so couple things I'll cover with you all today, a little bit about Thistle, who we are, how we've engaged with ROC USA, and the ROC stands for Resident-Owned Communities, and a little bit about them. And then our partner with ROC USA Capital, who does all of our lending, because that's a big question. How do we help secure these communities when they go through resident-owned, go through the resident ownership process? So I'll kind of talk about that, and then dive a little bit more on what is specifically a ROC and how does that work with this model. So a little bit about Thistle. It's a Boulder County-based organization that started back in the 80s with a focus on affordable housing. And they have quite a few affordable housing properties throughout the county between Longmont and Boulder, and opening in Louisville here soon. And they established, a CLT, a community land trust model there within the county. And then also we do building, some, condo builds, if you will, some fair market value homes that also offset with a few of the homes being focused on affordable housing. That's been Thistle's bread and butter until about 2017 when Thistle Rock was founded, and we were approached by Rock USA to join their national network to be their affiliate, which they nickname a CTAP. That stands for Certified Technical Assistance Provider, meaning that we will be their CTAP in Colorado, and we are the only entity in Colorado that can institute the resident-owned community model. So what our role looks like in this process is we, guide them through two different phases, if you will. So we go through this pre-purchase phase, which they're like Mountain Valley is in right now. Once they get a notice and they are figuring out what we do, what options are available. Do we want to pursue resident ownership or another model, whatever else could be out there, similar to a nonprofit purchase or a land trust? But if they engage with us, we put on our pre-purchase hat, if you will, where we have a team that's dedicated to the entire acquisition process for the residents. So that team consists of two different sides. One side is the acquisition team, who we have a senior manager that focuses on all things due diligence, underwriting with the loan, mapping out everything that they're going to need to do to get a successful acquisition through. And then we have another senior manager and his team who focus on the residents and the coaching of the residents on creating bylaws, rules, policies, finding professional property management, and then just getting them ready and organized to become a business and start their own resident-owned community. So we do all of this in the pre-purchase window, which is anywhere from 120 days to sometimes it's taken a year, depending on the contract and the process. After they get to close, we have a team that then stays on with the community anywhere from 10 to 30 years for the life of the loan. So a typical loan with Rock USA Capital will have an amortization schedule that goes to 30 years. Every 10 years, they're coming to refinance, having discussions with the lender on their health, et cetera. Every 10 years, we will negotiate our contract, but during that 10 years, we're there to coach them on all of their business policies. We do loan servicing so we can make sure that they are staying accountable to what their loan agreement and covenants have. We do trainings with our ROCs throughout the state. We do both statewide and one-on-one community trainings. We make sure that they're staying compliant with their loan or any grant covenants that come up. And then they also get access to Rock USA as an entire network. And so we do all of that after purchase for the 10 to 30 years that we're going to be together. So we wear quite a few different hats as we go through this process, both pre and post purchase. So like I mentioned earlier, we're a partner with Rock USA as a national network. They're not necessarily like our mothering, good organization. That would be Thistle. And so we're a Colorado organization, but we are just a partner with them in this network. And this map here kind of shows you how many rocks there are in each state right now as we're looking at, how its growth. It started in the Northeast, so that little yellow main area into getting into the maroon. There's a huge contingency out there where the model began, and that number is very small, but there's 150 in just New Hampshire, which is a very small state. But the program really launched there, and then it's slowly grown across the West Coast. And so we now have 9 other CTAPs, including Thistle, who are doing this work. There are 344 total resident-owned communities nationally. 24,000 home sites have been preserved by becoming resident-owned. And we just hit recently, we went over the $1 billion mark of financing that Rock USA Capital has done on all of these acquisitions. So you can see that joining the Rock network isn't just joining our state network of 12, it's joining a much larger network that's been expanding over the last, several years. So this kind of gives you a quick little breakdown at what we see in some numbers as far as communities that go into resident ownership and how they have, been successful and what they're experiencing now overseeing their business. There's some interesting number here, but I won't point out every single piece to save some time. But I will say one big piece I like to see is that $600 on average is annual site fees are $600 below what market rates are in the areas that we are seeing rocks after 5 years of ownership, which is a really big deal because if you see it, the percentages that an investor-owned community can raise rents, whereas a ROC would raise rents. Over on the bottom right here, you see a ROC only raise their rents only about 0.9% annually. They're only raising rents to make sure costs can be covered. They're not covered. They're not looking to make a profit, generate a huge amount of revenue. They're looking to make sure that their business can be ran effectively while also providing affordable housing option, which is a huge difference if when you see an investor owner who's coming in who is trying to make a profit. And the little graph there at the bottom, unfortunately, it is little. I'm not doing a good job to show you this, but I'm kind of like how I'll explain it to you. But that blue curve that you see on that graph, that is an investor-owned property and their rent increases. And that little sliver of the maroon color down there, that's what Rock USA or Rock Finance deal, that's what their rent increases are looking like in the span, of looking at 30 years. So that small percentage in comparison shows that they're not in that game to make, a ton of money like an investor is. Like I said, they're here to maintain that affordable housing option that's going to be there long term and that they are in control of. So like I was mentioning earlier, we partner with Rock USA Capital as our main lender in all of our transactions here in Colorado. We also do partner with IDF, Impact Development Fund, on some smaller deals, but our main go-to is Rock USA Capital. And so they are a CDFI nonprofit bank, and so they have had access to some really great subsidized funds nationally. And then within Colorado, we built a $55 million acquisition pool that is incredibly low interest. And then they also apply to administer the SB 160 funds, which is a revolving loan product with DOLA that they are also able to administer. So our typical loans are looking at a stack where their normal product would come in around 5% and that interest, whereas the subsidized funds are coming in around 3%, sometimes 2%, depending on the season where we're at, nationally. But they get access to some really great funding, which is what makes this possible to do an acquisition and keep rents reasonably low. And so they can provide a loan up to 110% loan to value. And they do pre-development funds that are forgivable. So basically, if Mountain Valley, they're able to apply for a pre-development loan, say they get to the end and it's not where they want to be and they don't want to own it anymore, they can say no. And Rock USA Capital's, okay, we just lost all that money in that pre-development loan and we'll part ways. So very friendly and giving lender if you look at the scheme of things. Some of the other partners that we've come with in deals to stack a loan, we've worked with different foundations like the Colorado Trust, the Colorado Health Foundation, the Denver Foundation. We've partnered with DOH. Recently, we've been using applications in their Prop 123 funds to help offset some of the loan product coming in on acquisitions. And then we've partnered with several local governments like you all, ranging from City of Lafayette, Boulder County, City of Golden, who have come in and created their own loan to support the acquisitions. It's typically been a forgivable loan, so that way it can offset the interest rate loans. But it's been a really great partnership and been very effective for communities in the past. And quickly looking at what a ROC is and what this community would be pursuing, they're pursuing creating a cooperative. So they're not becoming a 501c3. They're creating a cooperative, a C Corp, that they will then be able to get their business up and running. So they're a not-for-profit business. They're just not a 501c3, so they're not eligible for that actually. So the cooperative itself is who purchases the land. So Mountain Valley Mobile Home Cooperative, they would purchase the land and then they would manage that property as a business jointly, cooperatively for the life of their loan. Each household has a right to membership as long as they are a resident owner. Unfortunately, if you are a renter, you are not eligible to become a member of the cooperative, but this promotes the whole piece of being a resident-owned community. The owner of the home is who can join, and their home can then be part of the membership as a whole. The members continue to own their home, and then they are also able to sell their home. It's their equity at whatever they choose to set that price at. I mean, that's something that the co-op doesn't necessarily have a say in, but we are seeing that the equity in homes and co-ops are actually increasing versus what we're seeing homes selling for in investor-owned communities. so which has been really beneficial for those residents. And it's a limited equity model. So the co-op shares have a fixed value, but they don't increase. This is something that the cooperative will own and that they control. The rocks work that each household can join, and it's one vote, one member per household. The entire family can be under one membership, but it is only one vote. So if you had a household of 6, that doesn't give you a leg up voting against the household of 2. It's a one household, one member, one vote. Like I said, they must own the home and reside in the community full time. The members will elect a board that is then empowered, and then they will govern the business on a day-to-day basis. They're required to hire professional property management to be the boots on the ground of the operation. We don't expect neighbors to go knock on neighbors' doors asking for rent or handing an eviction notice or anything like that. They hire a professional company who will do that for them. And that's a requirement from their lender as well. And then at the members and the board all will work together to adopt their key documents, their rules, their bylaws, like I mentioned earlier. Those are pieces that they get to have a say in creating. By partnering with us, we give them templates that have been state approved we work with an attorney who approves all of those templates, and then we make sure they get all of those pieces so they can get up and running, but they then can edit as needed what they want. They have a certain weight on a dog restriction they want to, and have it put in place, they control that. They get it all approved by an attorney at the end to make sure it's not violating any Fair Housing Acts or anything like that. And then they're in control. Those are all pieces that they get to create, not Thistle. We don't have any ownership in it. We just help them get through this entire process. But they are in full control. What it requires the communities, we ask to get at least 80% of the community to be engaged. And that is a Thistle requirement, and also paired up with one of our subsidized loan pools. But we ask for 80% because this is a very long-term endeavor. We call it a forever endeavor as a nickname. But we want 80% engaged because we want them to be able to see this through long-term. And if you have low engagement, it's not necessarily going to work well for them. And so we wouldn't engage if that wasn't there. Mountain Valley is over 80%, and they're doing really well. They have great attendance in meetings. It's exactly what we want to see for this process. The community members have to be willing to volunteer and be on the board at some point. And we ask anybody who's not on the board to be on committees to help with that bylaws and rules group, or maybe it's a welcome group, maybe it's a rules violation group, etc. We ask them to still engage in some way, so that way they're still part of the cooperative business model. And then overall, we just ask them to be, open and willing to be available for training. We have really amazing trainers on our team who are experts in the field, who will make sure they get everything they need knowledge-wise. We just need them to be willing to take it and use it, and then stay informed and be engaged with us as we go. So kind of going back to the financing piece of ROCs versus a commercial or investor-owned group. It's my left, but the commercial investor ownership side, you can see that little bucket where, there's the rent is going into the bucket, and then the money goes to the basic operational costs. But then there's also, parts of their rent that they don't really have to be told what it goes to, and that's typically the profit, right? So they're kind of going into this, with the investor side, they'll take care of the bare needs or basic needs maybe, but then who knows about where the rest of the money is going. A resident-owned community, they're putting their rent into the bucket here, but it's going to their operational piece. But then anything that they save, let's say they had budgeted $30,000 for snow removal, but they only spent 10, that's $20,000 in excess. They as a co-op decide where that goes. Typically it should go to their reserves, so they're prepared for any capital improvement needs. Or they may say, as a cooperative, we're going to give each other a break on rents for the next year and take $20 off or something, but they're in full control. They get a budget every year that they will review together as a community and then approve. So whereas an investor doesn't have to tell you anything about the money that they're spending necessarily, a resident-owned community, the membership, they're going to see every in and out of the budget and where their money is going. So that way there's more confidence. And they're, like I said earlier, they're running at such a low debt service coverage ratio that they're not trying to make a lot of money. They're wanting to get the money down so that way they can keep rents low, pay their operational needs so they can remain an affordable option. But it's very different in comparison, as you can see. Some of the advantages of becoming a rock, their long-term goal is that the rents will become stable and that, they're going to be based on those operating needs and not necessarily looking for that profit side. They're going to have better control of their maintenance and plans for park improvements. In this due diligence process, they're going to get a 10-year capital improvement plan handed to them by the engineer. And then the lender is going to work to make sure they have a reserve to start actually implementing that capital improvement plan. So they get control to get the things, fixed in their community to make sure that it is safe and it's a healthy place for the community to live and thrive. It's a huge community building opportunity. I can say that every single time we go into this, we hear from residents that I kind of knew my neighbors, but nowhere near as well as I know them now. And so they become way more unified in this process. And then they get, opportunities to get, some really great leadership training. And then overall, the experience is that they get to work together to really maintain something that they have ownership in, that is theirs. It's off the speculative market, so they can't get swooped in on and bought out. It's somewhere that they know will be safe and affordable for them long term. So that's Thistle and Rock in a very quick nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure that this spurs a lot, and usually that's where I spend the bulk of my time when I do these things. So happy to open that up.
Great, thanks, Tim. Oops. Got my mic off there. Thank you, Tim, for the overview, and April for the introduction as well. So we'll just open it up for questions now so that we can better understand the whole situation here. Who'd like to start?
Quick question. So the paradox with an effort to keep profits low, but then at the same time, or keep expenses low, but at the same time, sort of raising the price of the homes as a result. Can you speak to that a little bit? And is that a concern? Is that something that where any sort of contribution to the bottom line is expected when someone realizes those gains? I realize they're not selling a piece of land; they're selling the opportunity to be on that land. But can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, and if I don't hit something for me, please
Sure.
tell me. But in general, what I can say is I haven't seen it be an issue, if you will, but by way of when we've seen some communities who are on investor ownership side, their home may take longer to sell. They may have to lower their price to make it something that somebody would want to come into. What we're seeing is that the value is increasing within the market of the cooperatives because there's a demand. We get a lot of calls from people within the state, throughout the nation, wanting specifically to live in a cooperative in Colorado. And the reason being is they want to be part of that cooperative model. They want to have that governance piece that they work in and that they work together on. Necessarily have I seen, residents go and raising their home prices to, incredibly high amounts? No, I haven't. I've seen it, in my opinion, they've been very reasonable in what they've sold for, given the market that they're in. And they have been able to sell quickly as the other big perk as well. So I wouldn't say that there has been any, issue of somebody coming in and trying to run a profit of, trying to take advantage of that. I think it's more of they've actually been able to put their house on, their home on the market at an amount that is reasonable given other mobile home, sales in the area, and they're selling quickly. So they're not having to lower the amount that they are, having to meet to get what kind of equity out of it. The other quick thing I'll note too is there is a requirement within Rock USA Capital that any home, when they're selling the home, they're required to sell the home to the offer of the person who has the lowest AMI. So if they get 3 offers, two or maybe 120%, AMI, and then maybe it's 80%. They're required in their bylaws and rules that they have to sell to the family the offer of the group who is in need of the affordable housing option. So that's something that kind of offsets it in a really positive way as well.
April, did you have something to add?
Yeah. So I think we all know that we're talking about in order to help the residents make this offer and to make this possibility that there's significant subsidy needed. That's why all of these local governments are discussing this together. And I just wanted to add that in the discussions that we're having, there is a desire by all of the local governments to maintain these as affordable housing in perpetuity. And so there will be an opportunity when we collect these subsidies and begin to discuss how this offer is made and the conditions that that communities are placing on that subsidy. And so there is an opportunity for all of us to collectively or individually talk about what condition is associated with the funding that you're considering contributing.
So in other words, there may be a deed restriction with some sort of appreciation cap or AMI.
There could be all that's open for discussion. And we have model communities that Tim's brought to us that have put conditions on their purchases before. And so we'll be looking at those. As far as timeline goes, more importantly, we're trying to get the offer together. The conditions will be a part of it, but they will come second. And so we're just saving our discussion, our energy and effort to do that at a later time.
Okay. Thanks. Other questions? Colin, do you have any questions at this time? I know you've been really involved in or any particular things that you think would be helpful for them to
Actually,
explore?
Chris had a really good question. I don't know if you want to ask that, Chris, or you want me to.
Maybe which one?
It was the one about, so there's two parks.
Yeah, I was gonna.
How are they linked? What happens if they go forward together? What if one doesn't work? How does that whole process, I know it might be premature to, no, but I think Chris's question was, is the park here in Carbondale linked to the one outside of the Basalt, so that we might miss an opportunity if the Upper Valley one isn't purchased, that we lose the chance here in town?
Tim, you go first.
Okay. Yes, so they are not linked necessarily. So what the only linkage that there could potentially be is that right now, the notice that they've received is for the combo. It's a combo deal, like they're buying both. What the notice also did list is that they will accept, or not accept, because we can't say that, but they will entertain individual offers. What we would do in going into this is we would make two individual offers. We would make the offer on Mountain Valley, and then we would make a separate offer on Aspen Basalt. So they would not be linked at that point.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious if you have done any sort of financial analysis as to whether you think the price that is being quoted for our park actually is borne by the market, specifically considering that there is this, we learned that there is a deed restriction on the park already that does remove that redevelopment prospect. And so when we were first discussing this, I think there was some suspicion or concern perhaps that the two parks going together was influencing the price of both of the parks, and perhaps causing the investor in both of them to be overpaying or offering a higher price on this park because of the maybe higher upside of redeveloping that park in Basalt. And did you do a sort of independent financial analysis of, like, if you were, say, an investor-owned mobile home park investor, do you think that price is actually something the market could sustain? Because they would have to, obviously, I'd assume they'd have to raise the rents incredibly high if it's a $10 million, increase over the last time the park sold or whatever.
Yeah, I have a couple answers, if you will. So I think the one thing that you can see when you look at the notices is that we saw the price for Aspen Basalt go up, and we saw the price come down for Mountain Valley, which I'm wondering if that is because of the restriction for mobile home park. I'm not sure. We're not on the other side, so I'm not, can't speak to it. What I can say is that we will certainly, we've done our due diligence to start building out all the numbers we can before getting under an offer in contract. And what we can see right now is that, well, the hard thing is we have to meet whatever the other offer is. We don't have any wiggle room right now to be able to negotiate, because if we want to get an offer in, we have to meet those same terms as one side. The other side, as far as the market and what it looks like, I can give you an example of what we've been up against before in a situation that was somewhat similar. Is we were working with a community in Littleton, and the buyer on the other side was a corporate buyer, and they came in and they went and asked about, oh gosh, several million, if not close to maybe 12, 13 million over what it was valued at. And they were very clear. And it was kind of a rough situation because they even were talking to residents outside and saying, yes, we're going to go in, we're over asking, or we're going to over offer on this, but we're going to make our money back within 3 years. And it's pretty clear, how do you make your money back? You're going to raise rents and then start generating your profit because you've already raised your rents. You can maintain them there. And that deal, we did not succeed because we couldn't compete with what they were offering. And then after they purchased, they did start raising rents right away. Because in Colorado, there is no limit on how much you can make of a rent increase. The only limit in Colorado is that you can only do it once a year. There's no maximum on what that amount may be. And I've seen owners go in and raise rents immediately from anywhere from 50 to 85% to start generating their revenue. So I don't know if this is the perfect answer, but what I can say is, like, sometimes we do see these groups going in and offering more because they can then turn it around pretty quick. They start, evicting people, displacing them. A common occurrence is a deed in lieu of eviction. So then they get a hold of the home, they'll flip it, sell it at a higher price, and then they bring people in who are coming in and paying a higher rent. So I think as far as the market goes, it's hard when we're to do that full-on analysis when we're competing with something that is already there, if that makes sense. And I can kind of add on if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, our main concerns are like, or I guess the main maybe pushback on that, or if the analysis seemed like it was tied to them being tied together, that does seem like it would be potentially, violating at least the spirit of the state law in terms of giving the community a fair chance to actually make a offer that's not, encumbered by, other sort of shadow financial dealings between these corporate owners. I guess that's sort of my main concern. I don't know if I have any question associated with that.
Thanks, Chris. How about over here, Jess, any questions? Christine, any questions? So I'll pick up on that, kind of where Chris was talking about the deed restriction. What I'm struggling with, Tim, in April, is committing public funds to something. I just, obviously we have to be really careful there. So I can definitely see, you don't have to convince me of the benefits of a resident-owned community over an investor-owned community. Where I'm having a hard time with this is that, and I'm just focused on the one in Carbondale, Mountain Valley, it's already an investor-owned community. So I would feel different if it was a local mom and pop type owner and they were handing it over to the big, corporate investors. But it's already there. So some things where I don't understand. I don't understand if the market could bear doubling or raising by, some large percentage the lot rents. Why the current owner doesn't go ahead and do that. So it's hard for me to say corporate owner number 2 is going to do something that corporate owner number 1 would look on their spreadsheet and not also do. And then with the deed restriction, I think when this was first in the news, the vision that people have is this is going to get sold, scraped, redeveloped into high-end condos, and all of these people that are part of our community are going to disappear. Once I saw the deed restriction, I said, well, that's off the table. So now what we're doing is protecting it from corporate owner number 2. And I just want to make sure that if we're committing significant public funding to that, that we're really getting a lot of value out of that contribution. So if you could speak to either of those, kind of the deed restriction issue and really why should we be so worried about the next owner versus the current owner?
Yeah, April, you want me to go?
Yep.
So, this is the interesting space, and I'm seeing this in Colorado in general, is like there is a huge movement right now, if you will, of some groups who have ownership in portfolios that they are trying to offload right now. And I don't know if it's because Colorado is, we have pretty stringent requirements for mobile home park owners, and to even sell, you have, 120 days to wait to even accept an offer. There's a lot of things. So I am seeing a lot of portfolio, a lot of current owners trying to offload. Like example, we have 18 communities coming to us right now, including Mountain Valley and Aspen Basalt, and they're all part of portfolio sales. And so I don't know if some of the current owners are just trying to get out of Colorado or what. And I'm not, I can't speak to them on their business. And I think with this particular owner, same thing. Like I don't know why they wouldn't raise rents. I mean, they very well could. Maybe they're wanting to get out of the business in the state. They also probably bought it at a much lower rate, amount than what they're selling for, given that they have two. So I can't speak to like what the current owner and what their logics are around their business model. What I can speak to though is that there is a very real possibility that a group like the one we went up against, a corporate group, will come in and pay the large amount of money because they know they will raise the rents. I don't think they really necessarily care about the market sometimes, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, please. So don't, but I feel like sometimes they'll come in and they'll still raise their rents so high just because housing options are short sometimes in the areas. And I think especially if you look at the Roaring Fork Valley and I look at some of the areas we see this most often, affordable housing especially is incredibly limited. And then, and if you want to live in a nicer quote, area, you're going to up that rate, and people they're going to find a way to pay it. And of that group that I was mentioning earlier, they displaced, I'll get a better percentage number, but of the homes that they're displaced, I checked to see what their housing market, like what the homes are selling for right now, how long they've been on the market. They're selling really quickly, and that could be because of their location. They're literally right by, a really affluent area in Littleton. I don't know, but they're making their money back. And I don't think that they're considering the market. I think that they're seeing that people will still come in and pay it. So while I don't have like the most eloquent of answers to say why the current owner isn't raising rents, they totally could. But what I can say is that on the other side, where I've seen communities not move forward, they are being met most times, often than not, by the group who is coming in and raising the rents to a rate that's just not possible for those residents.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And then what about the deed restriction? I mean, that just really lowered my concern level. Like, yes, I'm concerned that people will have their rents go way up. We see that in housing across the community though, and we don't often jump in. And so I want to understand like and I really want us to be clear that there's no risk of this property getting developed into something other than a mobile home park. I was shocked at the deed restriction, how strict it was.
Yeah, I think as far as a deed restriction, and you're asking about with your funding, correct?
Well, no, I'm saying the Mountain Valley Mobile Home Park on the outskirts of Carbondale currently has a deed restriction on it that says it can never be anything other than a mobile home park, and the owner can't even petition for that or ask for it or cause it to be considered. It's extremely strict, if I read it correctly. And so that to me removed the threat of development. So I just want to be clear and ask you if I'm right that the threat that we're trying to eliminate here is the threat of people's rents going up. It's not the threat of displacement through redevelopment.
That's correct. So yeah, I think with that restriction in place, they are in a good space that would not happen. It would be, like you said, the rent increase, the coming in, turning over homes, things like that.
Okay,
Would be the concern.
that's okay. I have more questions, but I want to not dominate the discussion here, so.
Mayor, may I
Yeah.
offer just some more information on the question that you asked? So I think that what Tim was sharing is like, there's just a lot of unknown and we're having to make a lot of assumptions about what this buyer or the seller may be considering. To help with that, here's some information that I pulled together. You'll see the Mountain Valley in the middle here. The purchase price of the previous or the current owner was $5 million. The buyer has offered $15.5 million. The market has not fluctuated by $10 million in that amount of time. And so the thought is that the buyer may have to raise rents more so than the previous buyer had to raise rents in order to make this a financially viable decision. Again, a ton of assumptions that we're trying to make, but trying to pull together the data that we do have available to us, all signs point to you would have to raise rents.
Yeah, okay. Yep, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think it's really easy for us to say that just because the previous owner doesn't have really high rates means that the market can't bear it. And I think that that's a dangerous assumption to make, because I think nobody would have thought 5 years ago that the median home price in Carbondale would have been $2.3 million for a single family home. And yet here we are today because there is no inventory on the market and it's really hard to get into Carbondale. And I think there's people who are willing to pay whatever it takes to get into this market. And I've talked to some people people who live in Carbondale and people who work, in the construction industry, who live in mobile home parks, and they will pay whatever they're asked to pay in order to not drive to Rifle or to keep their kids in these schools. So I think I just would caution us to say that the market won't bear a price increase because this current owner isn't increasing the rent.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not saying what the market will bear. I have no idea. What I'm perplexed by is the fact that this is a property on one corporation spreadsheet trying to maximize revenue right now, why they haven't done what it seems like could obviously be done. And so we don't have to keep talking about that, but I'm just like, it feels like normally when these happen, my assumption has been, oh my God, it's going to go into corporate ownership and they're going to raise the rent. But the fact that this one's already under very similar ownership, it makes me actually question the validity of the offer. Like, what's our confidence level in the validity of the offer that this isn't another LLC made up by the same basic investors making an offer so that we meet their offer and then we get gouged because it's going for 3 times more than they paid for it 8 years ago. Like, do we have any confidence in that?
This, we only know what was listed in the request for notice.
Yeah.
Or the notice. So this is all the information that we have.
Okay.
I think, we'll just leave it at that. I just wanted to say that the current owner has increased rents. And so we're trying to get those numbers, but it seems like it has increased by, from $600 a month to $1,000 a month in the Mountain Valley Mobile Home Park since 2018.
Still a big increase. And then can you talk a little bit about what happens with the money? Say we came up with $1 million. What happens to our $1 million? What happens at the end of the loan? We own 2 units there for staff housing. Can you just kind of give us a picture of what's going on with this money if we make a contribution? And including what happens with our units?
Can I clarify something real quick? I'm sorry. Then our units are not within this mobile home park.
Oh.
They are next to the mobile home park.
Oh, I thought.
But they are on our property.
Never mind about that. Where's that? So yeah, what happens with the money and what happens at the end of the loan?
Yeah, so what happens with the money is, I can say from it, like what we've experienced so far with, the local entities creating their own loan, putting their own restrictions. So what I've seen is that the local city or the county has come in and they've been able to put what they wanted on the loan terms. And so if there were specific pieces around affordability or they wanted to put like if it's a forgivable loan, but they wanted to have interest rate accruing to ensure that, my example would be City of Golden said, we don't want you to just get this funding from us and then 5 years dissolve and no longer be a rock. So they said, our agreement is, as long as you remain a rock, you'll have our forgivable loan, but then it's accruing interest at like, I think, 7 or 8%. And then they had an agreement that said if they went into default in any way with their loan, that the interest rate would go up and they'd have to start paying back on it. So they were able to do different pieces, what worked for them of what they wanted to see to ensure that the funding that was coming from the city was going towards initiatives to keep affordable housing. They also put in language about the AMI percentages that they wanted to see, within the community. We're working on a deal right now in URA where they're doing a deed restriction where they want to see certain percentages of 80%, certain percentage within, 120, where that's a smaller group. So they're able to kind of go and create the forgivable loan and put the language that they wanted on there. And we have not had a situation yet where that language has not aligned with Rock USA Capital as a lender or IDF. And so the loan as a whole being forgivable is the ideal route. So that way it can offset that interest rate loan in the stack. But as far as language and any reassurances that the local partner would want, they could work with their attorney and put those in. And we're doing that in Glenwood Springs right now. We have a community that will close in August, and they just voted to approve the funding to support them. But now we're entering the space where now they get to create the language and reassurances that they want for that loan. After the loan is paid off, and if it's forgivable, then we would be done, and you've had 30 years of affordable housing, and the agreement would be hopefully that it will stay a rock. Most rocks would be silly to raise rents after that or try to sell, because what we're seeing in the rocks that have paid off their loans, they're dropping their lot rents to just operational costs to about $300 to $400 max. And so after their loan is done, they're able to drop pretty dramatically. And so we haven't seen anybody put it back on the market because they want to maintain that low lot rent. So if there's something that you all would like to see, this would be the space with loan language that you want attached to it to put that in. So you kind of have some wiggle room to make sure it meets what you all are looking for.
Okay, well, that's good to know, and I appreciate April, you saying like, you're focused on can we get this together now, and then we'll focus on those details later, so I won't bog us down with that. Thank you, I got all my questions answered.
A
Yeah.
comment. We want to focus on this particular park, but I also want us to just jump up a little bit and think of our affordable housing strategy for what we're trying to do is to create affordable units. And in many ways, this is the buy down program on steroids. We can't build affordable housing fast enough. It just isn't going to happen. And we have an opportunity with this situation to effectively buy down those units. And that's what we've been doing effectively through April's help throughout the region. So I'd love us to think about that. You raise great questions. Is it a real offer? All those kinds of things. But the way I think of it is it's a way to maximize our investment and get more affordable units.
Thanks, Colin. Any other questions for Tim or April tonight?
Tim, April, do you guys have a sense of next steps? Are you talking to the other local governments? What sense is the due diligence in? Have you found anything that we should be aware of about the park? You mentioned the 10-year capital plan. Are those things we get a chance to learn more about?
Yeah. So I'll answer the second half of April. You can answer the first half about the partners, but the second half with the engineering and the due diligence, I'd say that, would be more than willing to let you see the reports that come out so you all can see what your investment would be looking at. We have not been able to engage in any of that yet because we can't until we're under contract. Once we're under contract, we would be in that window that we could go in and have the engineers on property and start doing those reports. And then, like I said, we'd be more than happy to share what we find if they're within those pieces.
Okay.
And then to answer the first part of the question, the local governments are working with me and with each other to do exactly what you're doing here, get all the questions answered, collectively think about what kind of contribution they could put forward. There's a significant subsidy needed to keep these rents at the rate that they are now. And so everybody's doing exactly what you're doing. And as far as timeline, it's quick. So the offer for the residents has to be in by the beginning of August is the end of their timeline. As you all know, it takes some steps to get through a government process. And so we're moving as quickly as we can.
All right, I think you've answered our questions. We really appreciate your time. We know that you've got a lot of these meetings and it sounds like Tim's been talking all day, so hopefully this is your last one of the day. But I have a feeling we'll be talking again once things start to form up a little bit more.
Quick question, just on the sniff. I mean, does this pass the sniff test for you? I mean, I think it goes back to Ben's question, which is like, is this a real offer? Does it pencil out? Can someone like look at it and say, this makes sense? This would conceivably work and assuage some of those concerns that there isn't something really strange about the offer? I don't know if it's a simple amount of division and comparing it to, what's the multiple versus the current Glenwood offer or something like that. But it's just to like, I think that to me is sort of the biggest concern. Are we being hoodwinked on some level to consider this out of desperation rather than opportunity?
Yeah, what I can say is I have seen similar terms on deals before that are very close, if not sometimes like in a way identical to these, and that they were legitimate.
Okay.
And while I can't necessarily speak for the other side of that offer that's coming in, but they, what was shared with the residents in their second notice of intent to accept an offer, there are pages of all the terms that the copies straight from the purchase and sale agreement that the other party has submitted to this. So it's hard to say, like, are we, if we're being, kind of hoodwinked or not, but I can say that I have seen similar terms coming from a large group, a corporate group on the other side.
Thanks. Sorry to jump in there.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is wrong month. I was back to last week's agenda there. Advanced metering infrastructure, water metering system selection.
Sorry.
Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I heard you're excited about this.
I'm so excited.
Everybody should be excited about advanced metering.
April knows water well.
Thanks, April.
Good to see April. Yes, quite excited about this, most specifically because this has been a long time coming. This is the culmination of a pretty big effort to pilot study and test a lot of things and really try to present to you all a well thought out plan because it's a big investment. So that's kind of why we're here. I'm going to assume that I'm going to pull Kevin here. I'm assuming you all read this.
Great memo.
But I want to just give a little bit more background that isn't really in the memo. So our current system, what we have, if everyone's familiar, you have a water meter that measures how much water everybody consumes. And then there's a little box next to it that sends out a radio signal. That's how we find out what that meter consumes. The way we get that each month is we have staff that drive around to every single house through the whole town very slowly, waiting for that signal to come in to a vehicle. It adds mileage to vehicles. We burn a lot of fuel doing it in a F-150 pickup truck. It's an inefficient use of time. It takes about 3.5 days to get that done. So that's kind of what we currently have. And with all that effort, we get a single data point once a month of this is how much water that person uses. And then it rounds down to the nearest 1,000 gallons. So we basically we're flying blind. We have no data to really make solid decisions from. So that's where we started with this project of what do we got to do to improve this? So that's where you'll see in the memo is the objectives, and let's see, to kind of summarize some of those objectives that are important to us and why. Let me back up a sec. Most municipalities would make this decision by putting out a request for proposal and just making a decision. We have some issues that make it challenging. One of the biggest issues being that we have 50 customers from Prince Creek Road to Nettle Creek that we need to measure, okay? So to accomplish that, we can't use the typical technology, which would be radio towers with a radio frequency transmitter on it to receive those signals rather than driving by to get rid of that drive-by issue. So most recently, 3-4 years ago, some companies came out with cellular meters that can send that signal out so we don't have to go drive by it anymore. We can get better data back into our hands so we can make good decisions. So that's kind of what we're here to do. So like this, the memo says, reduce labor, get better data, and get a better meter. And the other bit I didn't mention here was our current meter that we've been using for the last 3 years is a plastic meter. And the endpoint, this is the thing that sends that signal out for us to get the data, is has not been super reliable. They're only getting about 7 years of use before they're kind of dying, which typically you want to make these decisions based off of kind of a 20-year lifespan. So that's the background. That's where we're at.
Could you pause there for just 1 second, because one detail jumped out at me. So did we replace everybody's meter 3 years ago?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
They are rolling, they just get
I
replaced
see.
as they go.
So the last batch that we replaced was 3 years ago, or the batch from 3 years ago is this kind of bad batch?
3 years ago, they switched to this plastic meter.
Gotcha.
Before that, they were a brass meter that was a little bit more robust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some houses have brass meters and some houses have plastic meters.
Correct.
And all of them require us to drive by.
Yes.
Okay.
And this would require somebody physically going into every house and replacing it over the next, like, just as your replacement schedule goes, or?
Well, so that's what as we get through the rest of this memo, the request here is to say that make this selection for this specific type of meter that we tested, that we had good results with, that was second least expensive, and start figuring out a way to fund it. We're going to go seek grant funding and then plan a deployment method.
Okay.
We don't know exactly what that looks like, whether we go for a fast deployment, just get it done, replace it over whatever, 10 years or somewhere in between.
Okay, sorry to jump you ahead. I'll let you
Yep.
get back on your
Nope,
track.
That's great.
And I will admit that I'm a pretty good reader of my memos. This one is particularly detailed and technical, and so I cannot say that I've read every word in it. So I might ask questions that are answered in the memo, and I apologize in
To
advance.
answer Ross directly, when we walked up here today, he said, "Is that whole 25 pages for us?" I was impressed. First 2 pages summarizes the key details for you all. The rest of it is a lot of summarizing for our posterity, for our future, so we can pick up our breadcrumbs and be like, why are we doing this again?
Mhm. Okay, did you have anything else you wanted to share? You were kind of giving us background and then.
Background and let me just reiterate that the cost in this proposal is hardware. We have not planned the installation, so there is no installation cost in here. Most of this installation, I think our general plan is that we would install this ourselves. We wouldn't hire anybody. This isn't a contracting thing, but we have about 350 pits in town. So these are where the meters, instead of being in somebody's mechanical room or basement, they're in a meter pit out on the sidewalk. A lot of those will have increased cost to install.
And then are there increased operating costs? I mean, do we have to hopefully not pay a cell connectivity fee every month for every meter?
This is all inclusive of hardware and includes all that operating costs
Okay, for the life of the meter, I guess.
for an assumed 20-year lifespan.
Okay. Anything else you want to share, or we're just
That's it. Fire away questions.
spitballing questions? Okay, let's do it. Good for Jess.
So my main question was, I'm mostly comfortable with this because I think it's really important, especially with what we talk about with efficiency and climate change and all of that, because driving around 3.5 days each month seems really inefficient to me in all kinds of fronts. The thing that jumped out to me was that we're going with a not local supplier. And I understand why, but it seems like with this MSPS system that scored the highest, it also has this downfall of it being a newer, smaller company. And so we run the risk of it going out of business in 5 years. Is it worth that it's a bigger system or a bigger company and maybe we'll have better longevity and they're local, keeping our business local? For you at all?
I think that is that's where it boiled down. I think that's the quintessential question for me as well. But that when we boil this down, that was the important aspect of the company. MSPS is based out of Colorado Springs. They've been responsive to date, but to your point, they are smaller. MSPS has been in business for I think 35 years, so they've been around. But the endpoint, the thing that sends out the signal, has not been around for more than a few years. They don't have a huge market share. So we looked at that carefully. The answer to it is, I believe, because the two pieces are separate, the meter and the endpoint are separate, which some of the proposals they're not separate. Because those two pieces are separate, it gives us flexibility in the future. If we have to switch to a different meter, that endpoint works with other meters. If we have to switch the endpoint, it'll work with this meter that we still have in place. So if we have to shake it up, I think we can pivot, is how we kind of landed on sticking with MSPS for the recommendation. Now, if you all think that Ferguson is great, I still think the Ferguson option, which is a Neptune meter, would be a great option as well. It would meet all of our objectives. It's just $230,000 or $270,000 more expensive.
I would just hate for us to, like, let's say this is a 4-year deployment and we're putting these in over the next 4 to 5 years. And in 3 years, the company goes out of business because we know that that's possible. And then we have to suddenly pivot in the middle of the deployment. Well, that seems, I don't know.
As much as I would agree with the statement, in the time that in the last year that we did this pilot study, Ferguson switched between Neptune switched through 2 separate vendors and just landed on Ferguson. So I don't feel like they provide as much stability as we might hope.
All right, that's good to know.
And I think if they had been stable for 10 years, I might have recommended the Neptune meter.
Okay, good information, thanks.
And if similarly, then if something happens with MSPS and we decide to go with them, but others will distribute this same, how do you pronounce it, deal?
I'm assuming deal.
Yeah. The deal meter with the Aquahawk endpoint, like we would pick up that contract with another distributor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know too. What other questions do board members have?
It was a great memo. Thank you very much. I mean, that was my same question. We run into it all the time, and companies you think are stable, all of a sudden they disappear and they don't provide any warranty or anything. So I think it's just the nature of the world we're living in, unfortunately. But I think you guys have done a great job of exploring the various options and coming up with some plan Bs, and I'm happy with moving forward.
Just a great memo. It wasn't I was trying to get out. It wasn't that I was trying to get out of reading it. It was that I was impressed with the breadth and the confidence exuded within it, and appreciated that. And often, I mean, on a few occasions, wish that we had similar documentation and of our thought process to go back when we've contemplated expenditures of this caliber, which is big expenditure. So I really appreciate that. Let's see. What are some of the benefits of the better data? I mean, I think just maybe for the public that, what do we get out of being more accurate than 1,000 gallons? And does it play well with the current system? So if that phase in is over the course of over the course of some amount of time, does running 2 different systems be a big issue? And then finally, can they walk a little bit in the summertime, the folks who are checking meters? Or is there so much equipment in a car that it has to be a drive-by situation? That was just a random.
They can walk.
Okay.
They can walk.
Okay.
You might have seen Jill as our meter person out walking around. She
Okay.
loves talking to people. So
I think I've talked to Jill. Okay, yeah, actually.
she has both drives and walks around a bit. So yeah, that does happen. To your previous question, the data quality that we'll get. So the MSPS proposal will get us data quality every hour. So it basically sends us a packet of information with information every hour about what kind of usage we get. And then it just rounds to the nearest gallon. In the future, we'll be able to use that to plan rate studies and actually come up with better solutions. Prime example of something that we would want to solve is right now we subsidize our second homeowners with our rates. So, which is a little silly to me. So we average the sewer rate structure over the winter when they're often not here. So they get charged a base rate for the whole year because they're not using it. But we can't capture that because we don't see it in the data often. So that would be a perfect example of something we should.
Doesn't it also help us catch leaks? And like if
Yeah.
there's a big water problem, we can quickly.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was like the main thing for me.
And that's a great position also that every one of our options that we tested had some sort of immediate leak detection. If it sees something running for more than like 8 hours or something unreasonable, it'll immediately send a message to the homeowner and to us that, hey, there's a leak here to go investigate.
So, and I think all of our questions are just so that we fully understand, like, this is a big decision. It sounds, you started, Scott, with, we can't do the typical radio tower solution because of the Nettle Creek run, basically.
Which is complex. Yeah.
Okay, but it sounds like, I'm thinking, you must have had a reason why you didn't just carve that out and say, well, we'll keep driving up there. I mean, it's 50 meters, it's not that big of a deal, and we'll do this other solution for the whole town. Is that because of all these other advantages of the better data and everything, or?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So it would, by getting everything on the same system, then we'll be able to get that data, the leak detection, all the other advantages that the improved data will give us and prevent us from having to drive just up Nettle. Even if it was up, say we wanted to get that data once a week just to get better data, that's still adding a lot of drive time and whatnot.
Okay. And I imagine it would have been a really large investment to get radio towers and all that as well.
Yeah, that was, I think even Mark was working on that and had a proposal that I saw from 4 or 5 years ago that was $250,000 in just radio towers.
Okay. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the financing then? So if we approve this, we're approving, it says, to select MSPS proposal, seek grant funding and plan the project. So just maybe a little bit of a look into the future here. So it's a $1.3 million cost. I anticipate that'll be, you said we've got 500,000 in this year's wastewater budget. So what's the kind of best case scenario, worst case scenario for how this rolls out and what the funds look like?
Worst case scenario. Let's start with the worst case. Worst case, we have to fund this completely. If that were the case, I would probably suggest some sort of longer term deployment, maybe do it over 3 or 4 years, continue to fund it at $400,000 or $500,000 a year, basically at the rate that we can get this done by ourselves. So that would be worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we're going to go seek some grant funding. Our primary source of grant funding that we were anticipating going for, which would have been a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant, is frozen, as you might imagine. So that has disappeared. So now we're searching for new alternatives. If we could get a 50% match, right? We cut this purchase cost in half, and we would purchase as we need. Mountain States, and we don't have to buy it all at once. We don't have to house all the inventory. We just come up with a plan. Hey, we've got 2 full-time equivalents that are going to go out there and install. That means we can get X number of meters done per month or per year. That's how many we're going to buy. And kind of just go that way and then manage the grant. Most of the grants would have some sort of deployment time horizon that would needed to be followed. So we would have to, we would adjust the plan based off of whatever grant funding we were able to procure.
And are there other significant grants that have high potential without that federal one?
I think there are. I think there's both some state grants. The Colorado Water Conservation Board has a grant that I think would be ideally suited. So we have a small list that we're building with our engineering support.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or a motion?
Move to authorize staff to select the MSPS proposal, seek grant funding, and plan the project to install an AMI smart water metering system.
I
Second.
second.
Motion by Jess, second by Christina. Any questions before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstain? Okay, motion passes.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, Scott. All right, and last item on the agenda is the Town Center Master Association update. This is a topic that Lauren and I have weekly conversations about, but I wasn't sure if the rest of the board was up to speed, and our hope is that before Lauren retires, that we get this across the finish line, because it's a complex project to carry, and we've been talking about it for 3 years. So I guess that we put it on the agenda, keep it on the agenda, even though it's not ready for a vote. And I think, do we have any visuals to aid us here?
Yes,
Great.
thank you for reminding me. Voila. Okay, let's see. Like,
Chris, you might want to mute.
Oh,
the
sorry.
computer.
Jump in, but.
Okay. All right. So, not only do I have visuals to share, I have some to pass around as well.
Great, thanks.
So that way you'll have them to refer to. So our exploration of the Town Center Master Association and all things Town Center after that property was donated to the town it showed that there was this complex association that was formed in 2003 that there was supposed to be a board and a budget and bylaws and all of those things associated with that. They had one major common element of the association, and that was what we generally refer to as the promenade. It is a separate piece of property that runs down the middle of that subdivision. But there were also a number of limited common elements that were put in place to allow for development of public walkways, access points, egress and ingress and egress points, the space that runs right behind the Thunder River Theater that their loading dock opens onto. Right now, it just all looks like it's part of that dirt lot. And it is part of the lots that run behind the Thunder River Theater. But if we didn't preserve that in whatever we were doing with that property, Thunder River Theater might lose access to the back of their building, which is where their shop is, and their trash comes out there and all of those things. So we did a lot of research. I have been working with another partner at Holland and Hart that Mark referred me to, who has a substantial amount of experience in dissolving complex homeowners associations.
Just make sure you're,
He did the base village had a master association for the, it's not a promenade, whatever they call it, but he dissolved that one.
okay.
Yeah.
You may remember, thanks, Mark. You may remember when we first started talking about this, if you were on the board, that there had been a developer who had come in with paperwork and had almost gotten the dissolution of the master association over the finish line. So we had a bunch of documents to model off of. But as we explored this, I explored this with Eben Clark, who's in Boulder, and talked to the other members of the association, us being the main one, but there's also the Building 19 Homeowners Association, which is the backbone building. There's also Mr. Bailey's property next to 2020 Eye Care, and there's also the Thunder River Theater. They are all members of this association. It became clear that even though we had this huge stack of paperwork, there were some things that if that had gone forward, let's just say they missed some things. Public walkways might have disappeared. Easements would not have been formed that would have protected some of these lots' rights to access to certain parts of the property, et cetera. So we literally have been going back and forth for 2 years trying to make these documents not perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect document, but to preserve the rights and the assets and the access of every member of this association so that nothing gets lost in translation. So we now have a package of papers that is currently sitting with the other members of the association. They are at various states of review. I know that one of the members is chomping at the bit saying, where's the final documents we want to sign? It's the one that I thought might be the hardest one to do. Another one said to me, oh, we didn't do this already? And then the third one said, we haven't had time to look at it yet. So, but these packages are out and they are complete. They are draft documents because I fully expect that at least one attorney out there somewhere is gonna want to wordsmith something. So I am basically touching base with them once a week and just getting a status report, what have you. It's been very important to me, even though it seems like it is taking forever. It's been very important to me, but personally, but also as town manager, thinking about the future of this property and the processes that we are going to have to go through in development of this property, that if we can get everyone in agreement, there's only 4 members at this point. If we can get everybody to feel like this is a win for them, then we preserve a valuable relationship with our neighbors and our collaborators for a very long time into the future. They have some legitimate concerns about what's going to go on the rest of the property. They have asked for some language that shows that they are absolutely working in the best interest of Carbondale. Because sometimes it's not about what you're getting, it's about what it looks like and it shows people who you are. So it's very hard, it's hard to be patient. It's hard to review these documents. There's 69 pages of legal documents, and the package that I sent to the members, each package was 134 pages of documents because I included some of the background information so that they could remind themselves. It's a lot to read. It's very detailed. A lot of it is just fall asleep at the dinner table legalese, which, you know, I had to learn over a long period of time not to fall asleep reading that stuff. But so Anyway, I just wanted to walk you through briefly. Happy to answer any questions about the memo if you want. But the reason that I put this summary of documents into this package is because I asked Attorney Clark to please develop a summary of documents that I could include in the package to all of the members, because they don't understand these legal documents, and most of them don't even understand where these limited common elements are, or what they would be losing, or why we did an easement over here and something else in a different place. So what I did on this, and I hope you can see the red numbers on those highlighted portions, I correlated those numbers to the item number on this summary so that you could see that not all of these things affect every single member. So there's two different colors highlighting on there. The orange highlighting that's up near number 5, that is something that we inherited this property with, and that is a parking easement for Building 19. It is not part of these documents. It's already been issued and recorded, but I wanted to let you know that that is a parking easement for 4 parking places that is on top of one of the lots that we now own in Town Center. So starting from the beginning, items 1 and 2 are really the dissolution documents for this association. This is where the members approve the plan for dissolution and is the equivalent of a meeting where the board would vote. The problem is there's never been a board, to the best of our knowledge, for Town Center Master Association. They've never had a budget. They actually, to the best of our knowledge, have never maintained the promenade. The town has always done it. It's possible that at the very, very beginning of Town Center's existence, they did, but not to anyone's memory here, and we can't find anything in the records. So there's a consent resolution, and then there's a termination agreement distributing all of the various property rights for the Master Association. Then when you get to 3 and 4 specifically deal with the promenade. They have to be signed by everyone, but they are only for that property. The first one is a special warranty deed that actually deeds that property to the town. So it is no longer a property that is owned by the association. Also on that deed, if you look at, what number is that? 7 on the right-hand side, that little walkway, that is a cement sidewalk that runs from 4th Street down the Equus property, the side of the Equus property in between that and 2020. That was a limited common element of the Master Association that is supposed to be a public pedestrian walkway into the property. We made sure, that's one of the things that had gotten missed the first time around. We made sure that not only is that property, also the easement rights in that property are coming over to the town, so it stays a public walkway. You know, in one of the designs for Town Center, it would run right into a little pocket park that would be connected to the promenade. I don't know if that's what the eventual design is going to be, but we wanted to preserve that. In doing that, we also need to figure out who's maintaining that, right? Is this it's an easement that now runs over Mr. Bailey's property. So you know, how do we do that? What are we doing now? At what point, if it needed maintenance, would we fix it? Would they fix it, et cetera? Those are all the things we're trying to deal with in here. Number 5, up at the top right, is a reciprocal private alley easement between lot 17 that the town owns and lot 19, which is the backbone building. That was also a limited common element for lots 17 and 19. It is the access off the street for lot 17. When we develop lot 17, we need to find a way to get into it if there's parking there. And so we had to deal with what that easement meant, who was going to maintain that. Now that it is just a driveway for the Building 19 and the Building 19 Homeowners Association, there's no need for us to maintain it. But the minute we start developing that, then we have to have a maintenance agreement between us and the owners of that building. Number 6, that is a reciprocal alley private easement between the Thunder River Theater and the town. Now, if the town ever sold any of those lots, that would also transfer, that interest would transfer over to whoever was buying those lots. But right now, we own them. So that's why this easement is just between Thunder River and the town. And then number 7 is that access easement for that public walkway next to the Equus building, and it determines who maintains what in that property. You will see all of the legal documents when they are ready to come before you for signature, and I will hopefully have something shortly, but I did not want you to have to read a lot of documents that then might have a sentence change here and a word change there, and then you'd have to read all of the markups. Our attorney has already seen them, he wrote them, but, and when we get to the point where we're asking you to vote to sign these documents, clearly we will get him in here to explain a little better than I can what some of the pros and cons to some of the decisions that were made were. So there are 7 documents, legal documents that they will all require signatures from the town, mostly because we're the main property owner there. Happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm still optimistic that we can get this done, hopefully by the 24th of June. But if we can't, I am confident that it will, that it is imminent, that we're getting there.
Right, thank you, Lauren. Complex one, so good that we have it once before we need to be asked to vote on it. So what questions do folks have to clarify? Okay.
The 2020 eye care is not part of it, right?
The 2020 eye care is not part of it, no.
And zooming out, Lauren, just the gist or the big picture is that I appreciated you saying on the west side that if some of those lots, if we were to sell those, whether it was to our space or if we decided some different strategy in the future, all these common elements could be then kind of apportioned to the adjacent property owners who actually have an interest. We're just dissolving the master.
They wouldn't be common elements at that point. They would be easement rights.
Easements, okay. Okay.
But yes, you are correct.
And that we're really dissolving a group that has never functioned. So.
Yeah. But yeah. I think that having that master association and the restrictions that, you know, there was no board, but there were requirements in the declaration to have a committee for this and a committee for that and design review and this, that, and there was never any entity really to do that. I think that contributed to, I don't know how much, but to the lack of success in developing that property over the years.
Well, and I appreciate your commitment to doing this in sort of a amicable way with everybody. The reality is we could schedule a vote and we could take the vote and we have the votes because we're the majority, we're the super majority property owner. but we're taking longer in order to not, the first decision we make is the property owner alienates some of the neighbors. Yeah. Mark, anything to add about this process, or you sound like you've seen this before? Anything we should
Yeah,
be attentive to?
my colleague, his name's Eben, has been the one to really dig in on the details, which I appreciate, but I support what you just said, Ben. It was my suggestion to Lauren a long time ago that the amicable path was the one to pursue at all costs. Just, it's the way to get there and be certain you're there. So I completely support that. And we just found these extra easements along the way that have been missed by the potential purchaser of the projects. It'll be a better result than it would have been if they'd finalized their documents. So fingers crossed it'll get done, but Eben is, all up to speed on this. All the documents are in our firm's electronic files that I have access to. So if Lauren needs to get on her way and it's not quite done, the information won't be lost.
Okay, last chance for questions for tonight.
I don't really have any questions, but I just am glad we're seeing this go forward. I have been, does seem like it's been an unbelievably long process. And yeah, I do think I'm glad that we're doing it in an amicable way, but I guess I just would also, I think hopefully we can get to the end of this process amicably and have it be understood that that's kind of our obligation has been fulfilled, and that we're not going to have to continuously be bending the knee to them for every decision, because I do think there are plenty of other constituents that have an interest in this property besides the immediate neighbors. So I guess I would just emphasize that to some degree.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Chris. Okay, if there's no further questions on that, that's our last agenda item. Just a quick preview of what's ahead. Next week, we have a week off. The following week on the 10th, we'll have that pool construction tour, and then we'll have dinner between that and the meeting because they're close together. And then we will have an update from Wimber. We'll start looking at our capital improvement plan in more detail and prioritizing things. We'll have a Latino Advisory Board update, art space update, and we'll move those planning and zoning commission appointments to there. So that's a pretty big meeting on the 10th. 17th, we have joint meeting with the county commissioners and update from Park and Rec and Bike Ped Trails Commission. And then on the 24th, we've got this tentatively scheduled for a vote, hopefully, if we can get the legal stuff done by then, and a couple other tentative things, but nothing formal yet. As far as and I think we had those on our last document, but as we finalize those, maybe it'd be good to get a monthly preview at the beginning of the month when we get things finalized. We got notification from KRW today. Good news. All 4 of our finalists for town manager are still in. They're all coming to see us. We're going to get to meet all of them. Yep. And so we're working, Patrick's doing a lot of work to organize all the logistics of the 12th and 13th. And just keep in mind that on the 12th in the evening, you're encouraged to attend the meet and greet. I think we've secured the round room at 3rd Street Center for that. And then the next day on Friday, the 13th, we'll be here most of the day.
Can I just interject one last thing? So,
sure.
Just on the last agenda point, I just would encourage the attorney potentially to think about if there are any anything we've learned from this dissolution process that might be applicable to our, I don't think he was present at our work session. We discussed with the P&Z, our desire to be able to maybe instigate processes to dissolve PUDs around town. And if there's any, potential learnings or things that we could apply from this process to that potential process, or where that might lead us. I just think that's good to keep in mind.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Jess?
I was just curious when we're going to be able to go public with the 4 candidates.
I'd say we wait till we see it in the news, basically. So I think KRW does a new press release or something like that. So
I assume the town will send something out as a
yeah, we'll send something
press
out
release?
as a press release on
Okay.
that event. So that should be soon. That's a good one for me to check in with them on, because we're checking in on some logistics. So I'll make sure I ask when we can share that information.
Okay.
And
People are
we
asking.
will,
Yeah, I've been in the position of I'm gonna wait till I see it somewhere else before I share it with anybody, but
Well, and it will be, as soon as it's out in public, especially with the meet and greet, we'll get it out everywhere. When I came, I don't know if you guys remember, but the sign was lit on 133. Come to the Third Street Center.
Quick question about logistics with that. So if friends and family, neighbors, whomever are here at the meet and greet, because that's their only opportunity to meet these candidates.
Third Street Center meet and greet.
I mean, yes, Third Street Center meet and greet. And then we're meeting bright and early the next morning. So basically, if we want to get feedback from folks other than staff, we do that by a phone call late at night or something. Like if someone has an opinion, how do they express that?
My understanding from Mark Collins when he last updated this is they take comment
They take,
cards.
okay.
They
that's that.
compile those and they give us that.
Okay, so there's a formal process within that meeting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's the missing link.
And this is one of those items where it's okay for people to give you input outside the meeting. It's not a quasi judicial hearing or a land use thing. You know, three of us can't meet and powwow and decide how we're gonna run this. But if people want to tell you, oh, I met these people or I've worked with this person, that's totally fine. I see Mark nodding, so I'm on the right track. Okay.
The financial director.
I am hoping that we will be interviewing 3 people within a week.
Sure, yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's good.
Do we have a finance director right now or not?
We, yes and no. How about that answer?
Greg is no longer here, right?
Greg is no longer here. We have hired Renee Gustine, who is our previous finance director from 3 finance directors ago. We told her she was no longer allowed to be retired, but she is coming in and keeping us going until we get a new finance director on board part-time at her schedule. Sometimes she's here, sometimes she's working remotely.
Okay.
You know, we're just grateful for the help, and she's extremely experienced and knowledgeable, and you know, she knows our auditors, and you know, she's very, very big help. Renee, Renae, Gustine, Gustine.
Okay, anything else?